Have you ever wondered how long broadcast radio's impact will last in today's music landscape? Well, if you have, then you'll definitely want to check out our featured conversation with Ritch Cummings, President of Programming at Emmis Communications. We discuss the challenge of attracting an audience online, as well as the future of broadcast radio, and much, much more. Coming up. Hi, this is Ritch Esra from MUBUTV, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the music industry. We're coming to you from Muse Expo here in Burbank, California. We managed to catch up with Ritch Cummings from Emmis Communications. Rick, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Ritch.
You know, right before this, we were talking about how radio was going through such an interesting time. How would you describe the state of broadcast radio today?
It's funny, we have that conversation frequently, and I just had it yesterday with some colleagues and some industry analysts. And I say it depends largely on your view of life and the world. Those who are glass half empty type will look at the decline in audience consumption over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's significant and it's worrisome. Those who are more of a glass half full kind of persona look at this and say, yeah, it's declining. All mass media are declining. It's the age of disaggregation thanks to the digital world. However, radio is declining far less rapidly than print and far less rapidly than over-the-air television consumption. And as long as there is a need for mass reach among advertisers, and I don't believe that's going to change, radio is still a great bargain in terms of purchasing commercials and still has a very powerful reach with 93% of the entire country listening on a weekly basis. So it's not what it was, neither is anything else, and it's better than most.
Given that, how does radio, broadcast radio, compete or introduce in a world like you're saying that has so many more new digital platforms? How do you engage newer, younger audiences in what you're offering today, given that the digital platforms are taking attention? Do you engage with digital platforms of your own in another way? How does that work?
We do. We at Emmis, we look at the world and say we're no longer in the radio business. We're in the audience aggregation and monetization business. And that means over-the-air radio, it means streaming, it means apps, it means social media, it means video. We're putting a lot more resources into YouTube and other platforms these days with our talent, because that's where the 18 to 34-year-old demographic is. And so I think for radio to be competitive, it sort of has to be where its audience goes, and particularly with the younger end of the audience. We're just not going to be relevant at Hot 97 if we're just a radio station. And so we use the radio platform. A good example would be Ebro does mornings for us at Hot 97 in New York. He'll have a 30-second, 90-second interview with a Cardi B or someone like that on the air. But we redirect folks to our Hot 97 YouTube channel where they can see the full 90 minutes if they want to. So they sort of work in conjunction with one another. We use the broadcast radio platform as a megaphone to direct those interested to those other platforms.
Okay. Does programming vary from genre to genre, and does it depend on the market? You've spoken about New York. Mm-hmm. I know that you guys have, programming in Detroit, you have programming in Los Angeles. Does it vary from market to market when you're talking about programming genres in music?
It does, and we are a small group these days. We're considerably smaller than we were even 2 years ago. We've sold our Los Angeles properties, we sold our St. Louis properties. Part of the reason for that is, and we had operated those properties for 30 years. Part of the reason we did that is because we sort of looked at the environment and we said, this is still a great business, but it's not the business it used to be. And so you don't want to be in a business that is flat or in slow decline with a lot of debt. So we reduced our debt to literally nothing. We still love the properties we have in New York, in Indianapolis, in Austin. But it was important to us to sort of say, look, if we're going to be in this for the long term, and we have been, and we're going to continue to be, let's do this the right way, which is without much debt. So that's been the emphasis in this company. In terms of programming, yeah, we've operated, we did the first all-sports radio station in the world, WFAN in New York, way back when. We did the first hip-hop stations, Hot 97, Power 106. We had the oldest rock station in America in Casey in St. Louis. We've done alternative rock. We've done classic rock. You name it, we've done it. Lots of spoken word, news talk. And so they're all different based on the marketplace. They're different based on the format. For example, we have stations in Indianapolis that are targeted toward adults, 25-54. One of them is a passive music. It's a background at work station. And for us to try to do anything other than recognize that for what it is would be silly. It has very good ratings, but it is not a music discovery place. It's playing 30-year-old records, and it plays them at work, and it's got a huge female audience, number one in the market with women. But it is strictly for the 8:30 to 5 o'clock crowd, and you can see it in the consumption line. It's really low until 8:30 when it jumps up above what we call the PUM line, persons using measured media, and it stays there until 4:30 when they turn the radio off and go home. And then you've got the flip side of that, which is a very active music discovery station like Hot 97, where it's important for those listeners to know, to hear first, world premieres, to hear the latest record that Migos put out or Meek Mill put out. They are cutting edge and they want to know what's next. So they're programmed in vastly different fashion.
Okay. It's interesting. As you were speaking, I was trying to figure out, as you spoke about the programming differences with regards to classic rock format at work and a hip hop format, the differences in audiences are that.
Yes.
You talked about the expanded base that Emmis has done with regards to visual.
Right.
I'm curious, what do you find? You've been in radio a long time. What do you find are the major differences today between the new active audience and radio audiences of the past? I mean, you're still dealing with radio, but you're also talking about adding a whole different dimension to radio.
Right.
Is there a difference in the desire of those audiences from past audience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk to that?
I think a couple things come to mind. We always looked at classic rock as a format that is 35 to 64 years of age, right? These records, the heyday of classic rock was the 70s. Iconic bands. But we discovered a few years ago, suddenly America's oldest rock station, Casey, was top rated 18 to 34. And we said, how's that happening? Why is that happening? And what we discovered over time is that there is a whole new generation of listeners who can appreciate, the Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin for what they were, the greatest rock bands of all time. AC/DC, Rush. Rush is gigantic in St. Louis. And you got all these 20-somethings whose parents listen to that music, and then they've discovered it, and they've discovered it via other platforms. Through movies, soundtracks, through Spotify, through Pandora, through Amazon Music, the various music streaming channels that they subscribe to. They've discovered it through their friends, sharing that music through social media. And so there's sort of been a renaissance of all of that 30 and 40-year-old music with kids who were far from being born when those artists were current artists. So you've got that dynamic working. You've also got you've got a circumstance in a place like New York with Hot 97 where we sort of look at the world and say we still play very few records because it is a giant accumulative audience of a couple million people, and they tune in wanting to hear Cardi B's hit record. But we also have to serve that new music element. And so we do that a lot through our digital channels. We do it through Funkmaster Flex, a very famous DJ at Hot 97. At night, he does He does freestyle battles where he brings artists in and they do battles. And he's very, very big into introducing new music that he discovers in clubs. And he brings that to the audience, but less so over the air. Part of it, yes, but more so with digital channels. And that's where we can get deep. And we can go to, I hate to use the phrase dumbed down, but when you're talking to 2.5 million people, there's a common denominator there, and it is dumbed down. But when you're talking to a smaller segment that has huge passion and for music discovery and wanting to know the latest thing that these artists are putting out, then you can go deep there. And so we kind of use them in conjunction with one another, and it works really well.
It's interesting. I'm curious, as you speak about these things, there's so many distinctions that you're making, and I'm curious, how does Emmis find the tools, or what tools do you use to find what your audience wants in a specific market when you're programming?
They differ by format considerably, but some of the tools are very common. We developed a set of online tools close to 10 years ago now that we're constantly updating and enhancing to look at the ratings. As you're probably aware, Nielsen, a little over 10 years ago, in the top 50 markets, went from diary, the old pencil and paper method, which was increasingly being criticized as outdated, to a passive meter measuring system that measured exposure. And that changed the world for all of us in the top 50 markets, because it was no longer about building a brand that people would overvote their listening to. If it was a popular brand in a diary, I must have listened yesterday because I always listen. To an exposure system where, the truth be told, the biggest fans of any given radio brand in the top 50 market are listening 2 or 3 days a week. That's it. So it changed the dynamic tremendously in terms of what we looked at. But we use those online tools. We do a deep dive through the Nielsen monthly releases every month. We just did one this morning for our Indianapolis market. We have traditional, what used to be called call out. Now it's mostly online music research, where it's a carefully selected panel of people that respond to usually 35, 40 records a week. They rate them from like it a lot to hate it, and all the grades in between. We use something called M-score, which comes from the meter, and it measures tune out. So you've got a song that is in high rotation, but it's starting to get burned. We can see in that score, the tune outs are increasing for this song. Time to slow it down a little bit in terms of how often it's exposed. We use that. We use sales data. We use streaming data in the top markets to look at what is most popular in terms of the streaming world in those markets. The list goes on and on. We use in New York, like a station like Hot, we use the mixers. The mix show meeting is they bring in all the mixers who are out in the club saying, hey, here's what's happening in the streets. Here's what's blowing up in the clubs. It's a spirited, rather intense debate every week that they have. So there are all of these tools that go into the mix in terms of decision making. And often the result is 1 or 2 records may get added. That's it. So as you might imagine, there might be 20 candidates, but you're down to 1 or 2. The debate can be pretty intense.
For someone who wants to pursue a career in broadcasting today, what pieces of advice would you have for someone that wants to go into that field?
A couple things. I think I would say, keep your horizons broad, because the radio industry, and in fact all broadcast media, is changing at a rate that would have been hard for me to imagine even 5 years ago. Things are changing that fast. And so when you've got an industry that is changing at warp speed, I would tell an 18-year-old who says, I've got my mindset, I want to be play-by-play sports broadcaster. Okay, well, that's nice. You keep at that. But broaden your horizons, because there are only 200 of those jobs out there in the entire United States that are any good. And most of the people who have them keep them until they die. So you might broaden your horizons a bit and be prepared just to get your foot in the door. And that's my second piece of advice, is get your foot in the door, doing anything you can, make yourself perceived, valuable commodity, no matter what that is, because when you're perceived as having value, it opens doors that may take you places you want to go. So those are two pieces of advice I would give. I guess I would add a third one, and that is look beyond the industry. Yes, maybe there will be the opportunity you're looking for in the industry, but it may be something associated in a different industry, but has some connection. So again, keep your horizons open and think broadly.
So, future of radio. Very interesting stuff going on with Rick and how the broadcasting medium is shifting to adapt to a new age. So, insiders, here's the question of the day. What were the most interesting things to you that Rick spoke about with regards to broadcast radio? Do you even listen to the radio anymore? And if so, where? In the car? On the train? Home? If you have any ideas or experiences that you'd like to share regarding this video, we'd love to hear from you and connect in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to MUBUTV for more information on how to educate, empower, and engage your music career. You can also check out the summary, this episode, everything we talked about in it, the YouTube description below as well. And if you enjoyed this video, we'd really love it if you hit the like button and let us know what other kinds of videos, types of content you would like to see on our channel. Hit us up in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.